Hello, I realise I am now the person standing between ourselves and going for a drink. So my 100 slides will just take a few hours, don't worry. So today I'm going to talk about my presentation, which is meant to be of a slightly different vein. And this is about how I'm learning to use my own penetration and hacking skills to improve security postures of a cloud CTF that I've built. So I've described this as the lessons I've learned from creating a cloud-enabled global cyber war. So firstly, who am I? My name's Dan. I'm the head of security services at PSTG. I'm an enterprise architect, a penetration tester, a consultant, a massive nerd. I very much like to take things from a pragmatic point of view. So I'm heavily involved in security from a defensive and an offensive perspective. I've planned, designed, built, operated technology services since I was a very young lad. So I try and make sure I bring a sense of realism to the world. Bit of my history. I started in support when I was about 12. I went to a printing company that my mum worked for, and we had to remove some malware. I think we used the floppy disk. I think it was a boot sector virus. I know it got in the way of me playing Doom. From then on, my interest in technology was really, started off with gaming. I got on the internet. I realized that my parents couldn't stop me from breaking into my computer, and therefore playing Doom was actually easier than I realized it would be. I moved from a professional point of view where I started in a support role. I moved up from support into design and architecture. I then went consulting. I then have worked on many projects from an offensive and defensive point of view. The general point of view is to add some business value and do things in a way that is sensible, enabling, and keeps security human ready, because I feel we often lose that in the tech space. There's a massive focus sometimes on technology, on process, and people. And you seem that that's like the right way, right? Everyone says the 3 Ps. But what I find we have is a massive lack of communication and human engagement in making sure that we actually converse to each other when we deploy this technology to make it work. So apologies in advance. My friends, the beer farmers, lent me this slide. I may swear, I may not, you never know. So, how do we design security for a cloud-enabled world? Is it as difficult as we've had historically? Who here is obviously, we're all aware of major breaches, but can you have hands up? Who has been part of a breach response scenario? So my first major breach response was back in the early 2000s with MS Blaster and Nachi. I worked for around 3,500 seat organisation. We got hit by a worm. I worked in desktop support. I went downstairs and spoke to the networking team and I said, "Do you want my help?" And they said, "No, go away, go change some mice." This was obviously not the greatest technical challenge in the world, the mice changing, not the worm. So what I did then is I sat there and I was like, right, okay, so we've got a worm spreading via SMB. I got my whole team to feed me intel and tea. And I built a counter worm so that we could actively attack the malware that was attacking us. So I took a slightly different approach. The rest of the team were deploying Stinger tools from the vendors, which didn't fucking work. I sat in it there for 2 days building something based on threat intelligence that we were picking up off the wire and off systems. So I've had my fair share of experience with dealing with outbreaks. I had a similar piece with WannaCry in 2017. I didn't sleep for a week. And I kind of think to myself, why are we going so wrong? Why is every week, every day we're seeing a new major breach? We're seeing the same issues. Passwords are shit. You literally can guess most people's passwords just by guessing, not even guessing, sorry, stating which season it is, putting a capital letter, putting the year at the end, and don't worry, exclamation mark's going to get you covered. So how can we use cloud services to enable ourselves, be humanly connected, deploy technology that enables the business, enables the human race, and do it in a secure manner? So where I got to with this was like, oh, how do I take my view? Because I currently think that the current model and practices that we've not designed, because on paper we've got great security architectures, great practices, great standards. However, we aren't implementing these well. So I kind of want to start this with what's the real world look like? So the real world security life cycle, non-unicorn, no marketing presentation. Most people's security life cycle follows. Someone does some planning and gets some budget. We get program and project money delivered. A plan gets put in place to deliver features. Excellent stuff. And then a team gets assembled to go and design, build, functional test, and release an application and service. But then what happens? We then remember, sometimes due to an outbreak or a breach, that we may have forgotten a kind of a key important element around our services, which is, oh shit, we should probably pen test this. I mean, hands up in the room, who here has experienced the service go live with little to no security, integration, testing, design? I mean, we can look outside the window. I know we're almost in the cloud now, but there's definitely some names around that we can see that have had breaches. So why is the problem? What are we failing at? Well, partly, security testing is broken. I mean, what the fuck? Vulnerability scans aren't pen tests. I mean, even Picard knows this. People are selling penetration testing and delivering vulnerability assessments, which is nuts, right? But don't worry, the marketing world has us covered. Who's done a penetration test in the last 12 months where the scope was hack us? Because almost all of the ones that I've conducted, not out of choice, or been involved in, or seen customers purchase, have this statement of scope, which is, please don't actually break anything, don't run anything risky, never, ever, ever attack the workstation or the user of the system, especially not the admins, never phish them. It's all sounding good, right? Real life attackers actually work like this. They walk up, they sit there and think, I could pwn you, but I'm not allowed to send you a phishing email. A load of bollocks, right? But it's okay. We have a new buzzword which you'll hear. Everyone's now selling red teaming. This is fantastic. You can pay 3 times the price for your penetration test for them to walk in, spend several weeks doing OSINT for stuff that you already know. Then, once they've obtained enough data, they will then probably walk into your building. You will probably get them tailgate or enter through a sensible mechanism. They will plug a device in, and they will run Responder. Responder will probably get credentials. They'll have a very easy time. They'll find a service account. They'll attack that. They'll curb a roast. They will get domain admin, and their job's done. You've got a nice bill. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a blast at all penetration testing and all red teaming. Some of it's really valuable. But fundamentally, looking at, say, 80+% of engagements and customers I've worked with, we are missing a trick. We're doing it wrong. We're selling and buying the wrong things. So, how do I try and solve this? Well, I was like, fuck it. Please hack me. If I can stand up a cloud service and ask people to pwn me, surely I'm going to get breached really quick, right? So the mechanism I chose to do this was to build a CTF. So is everyone aware of what a capture the flag system is? Any players in here? Good stuff. I would have brought one along today, but didn't quite have time to build one ahead of B-Sides Bristol. So why did I want to build a CTF? Well, I wanted to teach people while having fun. How many organisations or how many people in the room do security awareness testing in the form of phishing campaigns? How many of you think they're really effective? A little bit? In the end, we're telling people, well, I guess my view is this. There's this argument of it's the user, we can't fix the human. Well, that's interesting because you can't really penalise someone for clicking on a URL that is designed to be clicked on. That would be a bit mad, right? When we send people documentation links, and we all do this, we send them a URL ourselves. So I kind of think the awareness scenario and how we teach cybersecurity needs to be a little bit ramped up. And when I was a boy, CTFs didn't really exist. So these are definitely a new mechanism to try and engage people. I also want to see what happened. What happened when I exposed a service to the internet that wasn't a honeypot? Because when we build honeypots, whether you use a simulated or a real system, you know they're going to get pwned because the route's too easy. You're literally using like admin, password, RDP open. You're going to get popped, probably from China. The results will be varied. You get some fun watching typos get put in. Hey, I'm the typo king, so I can't really complain. But I kind of figured, what can we do to try and change this? So I started playing Hack the Box a few years ago. I've been in various CTFs at Cyber UK, etc. So I kind of figured, how easy is it to create a vulnerable service? The answer is, it's not that bloody easy. So I kind of sat there and thought, do I have £1 million to spend on my advanced next-gen cyber AI dark blockchain enabled solution? Not really. I've got some Azure credit, and I've got some people that will probably sponsor me. So with this, I thought, right, if the approach to security is broken, how do we fix it? Let's try and fix it through the medium of a capture the flag game. So how did this go from a journey point of view? Stage 1, I had no players. This is a problem. So I stood up a Twitter account, and I made a character which is a crazy robot AI that wants you to steal flags, but also wants to destroy the human race. Sensible stuff. So I then went out and built a single web server in Azure, and I was like, okay, cool. How long would it take to build a box with a single vulnerability that can be pwned, but that you can't pwn me, the management platform, the cloud service, and how much security testing time do you reckon I'd have to put into it? 5 days? 4 days? 3 days?
3 days.
2 days? 1 day? I reckon, and I didn't time it exactly, I reckon that I can build a pwnable, non-pwnable service, or relatively unpwnable. Put a gun to my head, it's a problem. In less than a day, I can stand something up which withstands the majority of threats that organisations face. Now, granted, I have got a little bit of a hand in the game, so it's not like I don't know what to attack. But it's amazingly strange how quickly you can stand something up that is not that vulnerable to the majority of common attacks. Stage 2, I built another box. This time I made it more complicated. I also had more than like 2 people playing it. So I was like, okay, how do we increase complexity? So the time to build was a little bit longer, but the time to pwn then became even greater still. So I think I used an IDOR for this box, which is an insecure direct object reference. So really the only thing you had to be able to do is count to hack. I think this one took 3 weeks for the internet to break. Stage 3, I went even further. I started building multiple boxes. I started building a back-end, a story, and a real engagement piece. And at this point, my Twitter account's now got hundreds of followers, and we're starting to get more people play. Stage 4 was a few weeks ago, just before InfoSec and B-Sides London, I decided that even though there's lots of CTFs and there's an official game, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to build a mobile capture the flag? So on Saturday morning, I woke up and decided that I should grab one of my Pis and set up a wireless SSID hotspot that you have to break into the wireless, not a particularly hard challenge because the password wasn't strong, and then break into the Pi, get a shell, get root, and if you can pwn the Pi, you get a Pi. So stage 4 was adding in some localization. Stage 5 was, well, we should probably make this into an actual game. So I've now stood up, and this is before even getting to InfoSec. I then decided at the same time that we should start building a capture the flag portal. So I used the Facebook platform, and I put around 20 plus flags in with a mixture of Stego, reverse engineering, metadata analysis, a PCAP, all kind of different bits. And this is we're getting very near to having to actually be at InfoSec at this point. And then stage 6 is where I am at the minute, which is how do I develop this into a larger platform and a larger base. So I sat there thinking, okay, it's great. I've spent lots of time making capture the flag platforms, and it's all very fun, and I've learnt some stuff, and I've learnt some stuff that I'd forgotten. And I was like, well, what's the value in this for people in terms of the provider, so the people that are making these things, and what's the value in terms of a customer? So for the provider, it's a marketing avenue, it's a communication tool, it's a good way of exposing people to new ideas. But really that wasn't what motivated me. What motivated me was, how do we make something that improves education, improves awareness, is fun to do, and expands the ability to spread security knowledge away from the technical community, or at least spread it through, so that we can engage people like the legal department, who may not know a thing about PCAPs, but they may be able to do a rotating XOR cipher. And that's a literal scenario where all of us techies could go through a PCAP and the lawyer got it. Very annoying. So that was really why I set up a CTF. It was a way of testing to see if we can use this as a mechanism to not just do this from my perspective, but also to take this as an awareness tool into organizations. And why do it on the cloud? We've heard today a lot of different opinions and viewpoints on whether there's security in the cloud, how we're repeating the same mistakes. And I kind of sat there thinking, well, standing up a CTF is very much like standing up a microsite from a marketing exercise, right? I want it to be available on demand. I know it's going to get hit really hard over a short period of time. I also want to be able to deploy modern security capabilities. I don't want to have to stand up a SIEM and manage the data and deploy analytics tools just so I can get some data. So you can see cloud here was the obvious choice. I've got a burst mode pattern, so I used an IaaS platform, and I've got a scale up, scale down piece. I've also got choice. If I want to demonstrate different vulnerabilities and different paths for adding security value, we can mix and match. So the platform itself is running on Azure. I spin up VMs, but I also leverage other cloud services. So I put flags where the attackers put their data. So there's some flags in Pastebin so that I can teach people how to do OSINT alongside the journey. It also hopefully will enable them to start searching Pastebin for credentials and information that may be related to their company. One of the main things as well I had is cost and security. So, like I said, I didn't want to spend loads and loads of money developing this. So I was like, okay, cool. Cloud enables me to have great capabilities, low cost, as long as I remember to turn them off. I also needed it to be secure, or at least it needed to be robust enough so that if someone targets me or the cloud service, then it's okay. That we have sensible P2 control, because players may enter data into the management platform. I also wanted to be able to give local and cloud-based controls. So like every box, I was like, well, we could just put flags up. A lot of CTFs just put up a box and you component it. And I was like, well, hopefully, no one deploys a service without controls, right? So like all websites have a WAF. They've all got like whitelisting, blacklisting. They've got code reviews. You do pen tests. I was like, well, I'm kind of asking people to hack this. So I don't want them to just be able to run a brute force tool and get in. I want them to be able to sit there and say, well, if I've designed the service, how would I do it from a business point of view? And then make them try and attack the service how it should be designed, rather than just finding an open MongoDB and taking all the loot. So I didn't go through every single capability. And because of the fluid nature of this, I deploy in different controls and different measures depending on what lessons and scenarios I'm trying to teach. But I was kind of like, well, we design it secure by design. There's no way I was going to ask the internet to hack essentially me, my organization, and the services we run without making sure that we have at least covered the basics. I also sat there and I was like, well, what other risks are there from a platform and management point? I was like, well, I need DNS protected, because as we know, that's quite an easy way of pwning an organization. You log into their DNS provider, you own their records, you point their records to you. So MFA all the things was kind of the response to that. I also sat there and I was like, well, I've got a bit of a challenge. So I'm designing services that don't have a specific arena in the cloud format. They're literally open to the internet. So I've got a challenge where I don't want someone popping shells on the VMs and then using them as proxies or attacking the other players. So I layer in different controls like protective DNS, like just-in-time access. I put local security controls in, and these are all like free things. I'll put mod security on. I'll put fail to ban. There will be a hardware on the cloud provider config. There will be a a VM firewall config. And we will put in additional bells and whistles as and when required, such as using advanced threat protection, SIEM technologies. I'm going to be building in analytics that are more than only just tagging a text file when someone steals a flag. I also have to make sure it's backed up and recoverable, because in the case that I haven't done my job very well, I may have left a vulnerability in. I don't spend days and days and days pen testing. I guess the main point here was I need to make sure we protect the player, the platform, and the administration, which is myself. So cloud enables us to do that fast. And I said it was global. So far I've put VMs into America, I've put VMs into the UK, I've put VMs into Ireland. I'm planning on putting VMs everywhere. But our flags here are literally representing, in some cases, locations in the world. In other cases, it's just because it's a nice, pretty fretbutt style picture. So the result was, after not a huge investment, with a realistic and pragmatic view on security from a design through to operations perspective, I could stand up a CTF platform in weeks, not months, not years, that, touch wood, it's not unhackable, but it's hopefully only hackable where it needs to be. So I wanted to just show some stats around this. I didn't have time to go through and grab everything, but I wanted to sit there and look at some of the Cloudflare stats to show that why cloud in this model was really good. You can see from this graph that at the very beginning, you've got huge spikes in traffic. This is when people are brute forcing. So we can literally see from our analytics when the players are having fun or when they're not. In this example, the players are not having fun when they're brute forcing, because most of the challenges aren't brute forceable. But I just wanted to show the spikes and the ups and downs here, because what we can do is leverage cloud services to scale up, scale down, right-size the VMs so that it doesn't cost a fortune, but also provides a good playing experience. Now, this is a little bit smaller on the screen than I had envisioned in my head, but in the last 30 days, the majority of attacks and traffic come from the UK. The games have been UK-centric, even though I put them online as well as physically. There have been competitions so that you can win prizes if you can find me in a conference. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to grab a pie and put one in my bag today. And again, looking at the threat stats, you can see that the UK are attacking us heavily. That's good. There's no Russia, there's no China. Hopefully it's just players. So like I said, the premise here was to start doing something in the cloud, and I ran a few different boxes. I then came up with the Pi idea, and I then augmented that with a cloud and Raspberry Pi. The next step I'm going to is I've got, and this is all battery powered, so we're trying to make it completely mobile, the stuff that I carry in my bag. The next stage is we're taking a travel router that's battery powered, a Wi-Fi extender, and I've got community people now joining in and building challenges. So we're building a mobile CTF that is powered by Raspberry Pis, and the arena moves where we move. If someone runs at me, I'm probably going to have a problem. And I just want to give some ideas of the feedback. So I started this off not as it wasn't a business venture. This was a community give back opportunity, an opportunity to engage. But the feedback I had recently was great. We've had people come back and say they've brought their teams together. They're now setting up a CTF team, one group, inside their company. The feedback has really been overwhelmingly positive, which is great because that's what really inspires and drives this going forwards. So the game name's Pwn Defend. The idea here was that I want to teach people how to defend as well as attack. We focus a lot in industry on red teaming, on exploits, on O-days, and I'm like, just fucking patch. I'm like, this stuff is hard, right? Patching is difficult. I used to patch 25,000 endpoints, don't get me wrong. But if we design the systems to be secure by default, to be operated sensibly, to set expectations with the business, to talk to people, to become less robotic and be more human, you end to find that securing these things isn't that technically difficult, as long as we do it right to start with. So I guess that's my closing thought, really, is the way we've seen to approach technology deployment. Technology adoption is now pretty much vertical. Humans change pace is a little bit more horizontal in its pattern. So how can we take our learnings from the past, take the breaches that we are currently experiencing, wrap all of this knowledge, wrap all of this want and will to make it better, and deliver a more unique, a more engaging, a more security yes rather than no culture into businesses. And that, since we are going for a drink, and I realise that that's a major problem when there's more of you than me, that really comes to the end of my talk. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Any questions for Daniel? Paul?
Have you built in on the back of it any kind of exploit analysis? Because it would be really interesting to say, oh yes, we've seen 100,000 of people trying this, 50,000 people trying this. Oh, that one's interesting. Never seen that before.
So it's a very interesting point. On the evolution on the roadmap, the premise is to sort of combine honeypot-style analysis with this. I haven't so far, mainly because it's really difficult to build a safe, fun game where you have to know the route. And that isn't to say that I've missed anything, because, like I said, testing time on some of the games was incredibly low. But I guess the idea is to try and take what can we learn from the pen test and CTF community, who emulate the real bad guys, and often some of them are a lot better, how can we take the data and how can we build active defences? So the idea is to scale this so that there's not so much hardening in some instances to get some of that data.
Any more questions?
Get one more.
Before about making it right back.
Right, hacking back. So it is called Pwn Defend. So I don't know if anyone's ever, this is a question I've got, I guess, backwards, is who here has designed a service that you've asked someone to hack? So a couple of people. It's actually really difficult, right? The idea of doing defense CTFs is also an interesting one. If you give someone root access to a box and it has a flag on it, all I would do is copy the flag, or move the flag to a USB key, encrypt it, and then I'm done, right? I can go to the pub. So the hackback, the defensive side, what I've started doing is making it so they're protected flags. So if you do a brute force, or if you do anything silly like try an SQL injection, because they're super stupidly old, unless it's an SQL injection lesson, it will use fail to ban you. Now, obviously, we have a bit of an interesting scenario. This data, unless people are all using VPNs, I'm sure they're not, it will be interesting to see, because you can see roughly in the UK who's attacking you and the world. So hackback in that instance is a proactive defense. It's reactive defense against specific threats, and obviously it's a game. So we're trying to make it so just because you get banned, there's not a 2-hour wait. It's more like 2 minutes. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.